Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged. That's my guy.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Thursday evening. Apologies to our live audience. Was a little late with the birria tacos tonight on my behalf, so here we are 13 minutes later than usual with a different co-host than usual. Tyler is out with some school activities tonight, so joining me is my good friend Alex Katzen, rocking the Brazil hat, in honor of his trip down there. If you missed his article about that, definitely would encourage you to go check that out. And Alex, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Excited for this game. Excited for the rematch. Brings up some good memories of that trip to Brazil. So excited for this one. Excited to be on. I know the audience has seen a little bit less of me this season with some stuff I've been busier with, which Katzen's Corner will be back soon. I got some stuff planned for you guys in the next month or two here. Just been not a great lineup from a schedule perspective for me this season, with covering some basketball and stuff too for Washington, as some of you guys might know. So been missing you guys. Happy to be on and happy to talk about this game.
Yeah, I've been busy, but still watching the Chargers, obviously. Also voting for the Ray Guy Award, which is very much on
Lou Groza,
excuse
me. Yeah, the kicker one. Yeah,
the kicker one, probably more on brand than the punter one.
Yeah, honestly, true. Yeah.
But good stuff either way. Excited to have Katzen on. We are approaching draft season, so I usually start watching my draft prospect film starting around Christmas break, which for me is next Friday. So really anxious to get going on that one with some of these big positions of need, kind of solidifying themselves for the Chargers, which we can talk about in a later fashion. But we are here tonight to preview the Chargers and Chiefs Week 15 preview. I can't believe we're already in Week 15. Feels like yesterday we were talking about that Brazil game in Week 1 all the way back in August. So here we are, December 11th preview for the Week 15 Chiefs game. Before we begin, of course, I have to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. PrizePicks is extremely simple to play. All you have to do is just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. And PrizePicks is available in over 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. You can also follow other PrizePicks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one simple click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab over on PrizePicks. So go download the app today, PrizePicks app, and use the code GUILTY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that is code GUILTY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Okay, before we get into the nitty gritty here, of course, we kind of do a general check-in with these teams every single week. We'll talk about the injury report, things like that. This is a weird game for the Chargers and Chiefs. These games always mean so much, and this game obviously does. But the Chiefs, and we'll talk about this here in a second, if they lose, their playoff hopes are essentially over. And it's uncharted territory for both of these teams as we get into the preview here. So we'll check in on the Kansas City Chiefs here. You look at a lot of the numbers and you might think that this is a better team than 6 and 7 might indicate. Lots of 6 and 7s on today's statistical recap. It was not intentional. Overall on offense, still kind of humming, but some rushing weaknesses here and there. Overall, they are 6th and 7th in offensive EPA per play and success rate. Passing 7th and 7th, and then rushing 16th and 19th. A lot of people kind of searching for answers here of what's wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of Chiefs fans arguing that EPA per play is a bogus stat. It doesn't matter. Where are you at watching the Kansas City Chiefs offense and maybe how they've kind of taken a step back despite a lot of these numbers looking like their usual selves?
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't really expect these numbers to be this high, given that I watch the Chiefs play week in and week out right now. I think some of it is, been due to injuries, right? Like Josh Simmons is on IR. We'll talk about some other injuries that they're dealing with on the offensive line. Trey Smith has missed a few games last few weeks. Xavier Worthy has been injured. Rashee Rice obviously wasn't injured, but he was suspended and not on the field. And so like there's a lot of kind of like Isaiah Pacheco has been injured. There's a lot of like guys that they've been missing there. But I think a lot of it too, right, is just that you know I think from a down to down perspective, like in the macro, it's a little bit easier to mask the fact that the Chiefs are a little predictable. But I think when you're watching the games and you get to like, okay, it's third down, okay, it's the fourth quarter, okay, it's crunch time, it's like, well, I know what the Chiefs are going to do. The other team probably knows what the Chiefs are going to do. The Chiefs obviously know what they're going to do, and like it's been a lot of like I think defenses have been able to get into a lot more man coverage. They've been able to, play a little bit more spread out because there really isn't a threat of a run game because the Chiefs, even though they're still a league average offense in terms of rushing, like they've pretty much given up on it at this point.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of reason to like commit extra bodies to the run game or anything. And so you can just play coverage against them and they don't really have anybody that is separating well enough against those man coverage looks to be a difference maker. And that used to be Travis Kelsey, right? And they're kind of still trying to funnel it through him, but he is old. And so it's just not working the way like and I think that there's a little bit of selection bias there too, right? Obviously, because you're looking for things that's like, okay, well, what's wrong with the Chiefs? They're 6-7. They're not performing up to expectation. Like, what's going wrong with them? And so people are focusing on like
Yeah.
individual plays of like, okay, well, Travis Kelsey had that drop last week, and Xavier Worthy had a drop last week, Rashee Rice had a drop last week. And like there's just like all of these little things. And I think that all of those little things over the course of the season have kind of stacked up because they've all come at kind of the wrong time for them, where it makes it seem like they're really not performing up to the level that they normally perform offensively, when really like from a down to down perspective, like game to game perspective, they're still pretty much humming. It's just like, oh, well, it gets to 3rd and 5 with the game on the line and Travis
Yeah.
Kelsey, drops it because he's 35. And so, uh, age regression happens.
Yeah, age regression. I think for me, the most surprising thing watching the Chiefs is just like the execution errors that happen in crunch
Yeah.
time, where for the longest time during this run, as somebody who has seen a million Chargers versus Patrick Mahomes Chiefs games, you're just kind of always waiting for them to make that knockout punch at the end of these games. And this season, it just hasn't happened. And like this last week against the Texans, Travis Kelsey at the end of the game. I don't know if it was classified technically as a drop, but a play that he usually makes,
Right.
gets his hands on the football, and then Azeez Al-Shaair ends up intercepting it. Earlier in the game, Rashee Rice, who not like the most trustworthy player, right? But in years past, that 4th down conversion is a conversion, and the Chiefs go on and score and stuff like that. Instead, it's a drop, and the Chiefs are handing the Texans free points. Texans capitalize, score a touchdown. So just these late execution errors to me have been the most surprising thing. And then, when I think of the Chiefs offense, I think of, a very, diverse and creative passing offense especially with like screen game and stuff like that. And I was watching a reel from the Film Watchers guy. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter or
Yeah,
Instagram.
I'm
Uh,
familiar with them. Yeah.
he does great work, and he's been pointing out that the Chiefs in crunch time run the exact same play like every single week, and teams are figuring it out and keying in on it. So it's just it's a weird departure. Mahomes still looks like Mahomes, and they still have, even if it's not like a great supporting cast, it's still I would consider above average. The offensive line a little banged up right now, but still very, very good. So offensively, it's just a little strange. And then on defense, we'll get to here in a second. They've kind of regressed back to a league average defense. Obviously, Chris Jones still has these moments and Steve Spagnuolo still has these moments, but overall EPA per play and success rate 18th and 16th, passing 16th and 16th, Rushing is 19th and 10th. So a little bit better, you know, against the run in terms of the success rate, but they're also just not creating takeaways. They're 27th in the league in takeaways per game. So defensively, you know, the offense for the Chiefs is getting all the blame right now, and their head coach is an offensive guy, and I get it. But defensively, it just feels like also the age regression with Chris Jones earlier in the season. But I don't feel like there's many young players contributing there. There's not like the next rising star that we kind of were fearing or were promised, if you will. So defensive regression, I think, is potentially just as much of a culprit as like offensive regression here for the Chiefs this season.
Yeah, Noel Williams has started to play a little bit more at corner
Sure.
for them, which like that's kind of the one young guy that they have that's like playing a ton right now off the top of my head, right? And like they need a corner too next, on the other side from Trent McDuffie, who has a knee injury that he's dealing with. We'll talk about in a little bit when we get to the injury report. But so like he's getting on the field a little bit more, but that's been much more of a recent thing, right? Like they were playing Joshua Williams. They were they're playing everybody except Christian Fulton, basically. And so they're circling, like cycling through all those guys that they've had on the roster for a couple of years. Jalen Watson's been out there, and now they're starting to get to Noel Williams. So that's like the one guy. Omar Norman Lott was supposed to be, kind of a big guy for them, defensive tackle, but he got injured. He's on injured reserve, and so. I think it's just like another one of those combination things. Then also just a lot of those draft picks have just like not panned out. Like Jaden Hicks has not turned into like a quality NFL starter. And like a lot of people were really excited about him coming out of the draft. Like Chamari Connor is like barely an NFL level player. And he's out there like starting basically every snap for the Chiefs still. Like the linebacker core, like all of them are useful players, but I wouldn't say that any of them are like top 8 linebackers in the league, top 10 linebackers in the league, right? Like Nick Bolton looked like maybe he was going to get to that level, and then he's kind of plateaued a little bit. And then like they gave George Karlaftis that huge extension. He's not really done anything. Ashton Gelati has not really provided any extra pass rush as a rookie so far. Like it's just been a lot of just like, I think defensively they have just, I don't want to say missed necessarily on a lot of evaluations, but like a lot of those evaluations have not panned out to the level that I think that they were expecting them to. And so you're seeing a little bit of like, as the stars of the defense start to get a little bit older or start to miss a little bit of time with like Chris Jones regressing a little bit, he started to flash a little bit more the last couple of weeks. I think he's picking it up a little bit. But like, they went out and signed Mike Edwards back, and they're having, they're elevating him off the practice squad to play again. And, they're bringing the band back together. They brought Mike Pennell back after he got cut by the Bengals. Like, all of the, like them and the Bills both have this problem where it's just sort of like, if the young guys are not developing at the speed they need them to develop, they're like, we'll call up the 34-year-old dude that we had last year and get him back in the building, and we'll just plug him in there. And it doesn't matter if he's a declining player, because at least he's a serviceable player right now. And so, yeah, it's like, I think that the defense, like the problems are much different. And I think are still like just as, I think they're just as big, if not bigger than the offensive problems, really, because like, I think defensively, a lot of it is just a talent problem at this point right now. Like, I don't think the offense has a talent problem. I think they just have, like we talked about, like an execution problem, a timeliness problem right now. But the defense, like a lot of this defense is just like not as talented as it used to be on this Chiefs team.
Yeah. And, they still have one of the best defensive coordinators ever. They're third in blitz percentage, which over the last few years, it's been kind of more like, 8 to 12-ish. And Spags has really dialed that thing up. Like watching that Texans game, man, like he blitzed like every play. I felt like watching that game. So not great. The Chargers struggling with A-gap pressure the week before a Chiefs game is potentially a little dicey there. We'll get to the next group here. So what's changed since week 1? A lot. It shows just how long an NFL season is here. For the Chargers, what's changed? A lot. Jamari Sawyer, Bobby Hart likely to start at left tackle and right tackle this week. Obviously, in week 1 is Joe Alt and Trey Pipkins. Since week 1, they have traded Odafe Owe for Alohi Gilman. Kamani Vidal in week 1 was on the practice squad. Najee Harris was in making his Chargers debut, coming off of the 4th of July incident, played 12 snaps. very heavy workload for Amari Hunt in that game. Aronde Gadsden was a healthy scratch in week 1, and Trey Harris played 5 snaps and was actually outsnapped 14-5 by Keandre Lambert-Smith, believe it or not. Tony Jefferson was also on the practice squad at the time. Forgot to put that on here. He has 2 weeks in a row with an interception. And I didn't know this, but did you know that he doubled his career total of interceptions this year? Like, he only had 4 career interceptions heading into this year. Yes, 4 career interceptions heading into this year, and he has 4 this year. Second in the league among all safeties. So shout out to Unk. The unction is going crazy in 2025.
Yeah, that's insane. I had no idea that he only had 4 in his entire career coming into this. That is good for him, man. I love Tony Jefferson.
It's so cool.
So funny.
It is so cool to see him back. And like Tyler and I have been talking about him a lot this season for his run defense. And here he is, second in the league among safeties and interceptions. So shout out Tony Jefferson, man. What a cool story. What's changed for the Chiefs? Again, potentially even more than the Chargers. I kind of forget this just based on how right now feels for this Chiefs, but they were 4th in the preseason Super Bowl odds, and now they are currently projected outside of the playoffs. Obviously, losing to the Chargers would be a big change there. They felt like offensive line was going to be a huge strength of theirs, given their draft investments and things like that. Issa Pole, who potentially could have signed with the Chargers as an undrafted free agent,
will be Issa Pole.
Yeah, starting at left tackle going forward, given their injuries, and Jalen Moore, who they signed to be their swing tackle, will be at right tackle. Rashee Rice, you might recall, did not play in week 1 because of the suspension, and Xavier Worthy played like 4 snaps and then got decleated by Travis Kelce and missed basically that whole of week 1. So you mentioned Chris Jones turning it on. He's playing a lot more on the edge, believe it or not, and he actually has 20 total pressures in the last 4 games. So Chris Jones certainly has turned it on as they've tried to potentially save their season. And then the big thing out of Kansas City this week is Travis Kelce going to retire. There was a lot of retirement talk this week in Kansas City after the way that last week went, where he had the picture dropped here on the screen and was essentially inconsolable on the Chiefs bench. Didn't even go out there for like their last little 2-minute play there. So a lot of things change in an NFL season 15 weeks in. And it's kind of crazy when you type all of the different things out like this.
Yeah, and like I think the biggest thing, at a very high level, right? Like going into that week 1 game, it was like, man, it's going to be a miracle for this Chargers team to beat the Chiefs. Like it's it's an international game, week 1, Friday to start the season, don't even get the full week of prep. Like, the Chiefs just were in the Super Bowl again. Like the Chargers haven't beaten them in 5 years. Like it's going to take a lot, right? In order for them to win this game. And now coming into this one, it's sort of like, it kind of feels like the Chargers should win this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like they probably, like, at least on paper, right? If you just look at the records, like the Chargers should win the game. And so, I get like, they still haven't won an Arrowhead since 2021. Like there's still a lot of like, it's the Chiefs, right? But like, they probably should win this game just in terms of a talent perspective and the way that both teams are playing right now. And so, at the highest level, right? Like, I think that's a huge change since week 1 is like week 1 kind of came in and was like, like kind of just happy to be here, happy to be in Brazil, but like whatever, probably going to like have some Mahomes nonsense happen to us and the Chargers will lose the game. And now it's kind of like probably should win.
The Chiefs are favorites. Is that real?
Yeah, 5.5 points is what I saw last time I looked.
Okay, so open at 4.5, and now it's moved up to 5.5. I'm not a betting guy, but 5.5 points. I don't know. That seems like a lot to me.
Yeah.
For
Sports
how
betting
bad
is not technically legal in the current location I am in, so no comment. But officially no comment. But I'm noticing is all I will say.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like we can definitely get into this, but what version of the Chiefs are we going to get? Because it seemed like after the Texans game, that looked like a team that knew that they were fighting for their playoff lives, after the game. So we'll see really how motivated they are in this one. Obviously, it's a rivalry game, so I would still expect them to play hard. But very interesting spread there. 5.5, I think it's a little hefty. So again, not a betting guy personally, but would definitely keep an eye on that one. So very interested to see again how some of these trades manifest, or these changes I should say manifest themselves this week. A lot of offensive tackle injuries again, both of these teams starting backup tackles this week, so we'll see what happens there. Next up here, injury news and updates. Justin Herbert said yesterday that he had another round of x-rays done on Tuesday morning after the game on Monday night. Said that everything came out clean. Says that his grip strength is actually improving based on the pictures that were going around. It looked like he had a smaller layer of wrapping and padding around his hand this week, which is good to see. What did you make of just the health of his hand this week? Because I was not expecting any under center stuff, anything like that. Obviously, he had to kind of switch off from that late in the game. But what did you make of Herbert's hand issue this past week?
What a tough guy, man.
Yeah.
What a tough guy, I mean, I'm sure, I know he got hit a couple of times. He said he got hit a couple of times on it. Like it was obvious from watching that game that he got hit a couple of times on it. So I'm sure that he had, some of the best pain medicine the money can buy as well, coursing through his veins for a lot of that. But yeah, I'm sure that from the perspective of, Justin probably just went into the week of just like, I don't want the offense to change, right? Like I don't want any there to be any adjustments. Like I just want to be able for us to run our full complement of things. And if that means that like I gotta push through it and go under center and let us do our full complement of things, then that's what that means. And so yeah, I was really impressed just with the toughness to go out there and to do all of that. Because like you said, I was expecting a lot more shotgun, pistol, like really no under center stuff. Maybe bring Tyler Conklin ended up being a scratch, right? But like bring Will Dissly in for the tight end sneak. Give it to Scott Matlock on the tight end sneak. Like I don't know, right? But none of that, right? Like they went under center, they ran from under center, they ran play action. Like at one point he still had to hand off with his kind of do the two-handed handoff on handoffs to the right, but for the most part, I mean, like didn't really seem to be affecting him too much, which I think is a good sign. And certainly, like if the wrapping is starting to get smaller and we're starting to get a little bit less, and X-rays came back good, and he said everything's improving, then I think that is only a continuation of that good sign.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern is obviously on that Nakobe Dean sack. Like I don't know if he feels fully comfortable with two hands on the football right now. And that's now that the Chiefs also know that, I think that's going to be the issue, as Jacob points out. The fumble is that's the problem for me. Like the fact that he was able to go under center, great. Hand the ball off with his right hand, or excuse me, his left hand, great. But the fumbling is gonna, that's for me where he says the grip strength is improving. I think that's the best possible thing there. So hopefully that continues going forward. Other injury news, the biggest one, that is potentially season long here. Darius Davis spotted in a walking boot at practice today. A lot of different injuries for him over the last couple of seasons since he was an all-pro punt returner as a rookie. Troy Dye, Elijah Molden, and Trey Pipkins have also not practiced. So from a special team standpoint, the last time Darius Davis missed time, they had Tariq still returning punts. Didn't love the way that went, and don't love the best corner on the team returning punts, but that's just me personally. And then this last week they had Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal back there returning kicks. And again, don't love Vidal returning kicks. Not that I don't think he can't do it, but just adding extra hits for him, I'm not a huge fan of. Any thoughts on Darius Davis and kind of long term how this might, impact the roster and things like that?
Bring back Naheem Hines. That's the long term on that one, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a tough year for Davis, right? Like, I think he's been pretty clearly not the same since he came back from that initial knee injury earlier this year.
Yeah.
And it just is, I mean, he's getting run down by a tight end in the Eagles game on that punt
Yeah.
return. Like Kylan Granson is a good special teams player, don't get me wrong, but like you can't be getting run down by a tight end fullback type guy when you're Darius Davis, right? Like, so I think we're maybe starting to get to a point where, like, if all of those injuries building up and building up and building up is kind of starting to sap your explosiveness, it's kind of turning into a little bit of a sort of what do you do here situation at this point, and that's unfortunate because, like, like that all pro season that he had was obviously electric. Like, I really like Davis as a special teams piece, but it's been tough this season to watch, and so you're gonna have to find a solution to that. There were a couple of times where they had Ladd back there to return punts last week. I don't love that either. And now Ladd has also been limited the last 2 days with a foot injury. And so, okay, now it's back to Tarheeb still. And then of the guys that are currently on the roster, who is the fourth string punt returner, right? Like, you're probably getting to a point at that point where you're holding open tryouts at the end of practice with the guys that you have on the roster.
Yeah.
Like, does Keandre Lambert Smith get an active roster spot, a game day active spot again to return punts? Like, he wasn't very good at returning kicks, but maybe he can do punts. Does like one of the practice squad receivers come up to return punts? Like, do you send, pick anybody, right? Like, who do you send back there at that point? And then for kick returns, like, obviously they feel comfortable with Hassan Haskins back there. I don't really love Hassan Haskins being back there because he's not very fast, but they clearly have something that they like about putting him back there. And then they, with Kamani, I'm on the same page as you with that one. Like, I don't really love that he's taking extra hits, but he's at least like adding some explosiveness. And so, like, from that perspective, like, that part has been nice. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, just call Naheem Hines to come back, like, and have him handle both duties. I'm fine with Haskins and Naheem Hines on kick return and then Hines returning punts. He's just sitting on his couch right now, not, just hanging out waiting for a call. And so, that's probably what I would do, especially because the Grim Reaper got released a few weeks ago to make room for Delvon Campbell on the practice squad. And so we don't have him as an option as a punt returner to elevate from the practice squad. Jalen Rager is not on the practice squad anymore. Like, all the guys that they had in the
Travion
preseason
Williams
are not on the
signed
roster.
to the Browns active roster, which is crazy.
Yeah, like they don't, like, there's nobody available. Like, I guess if you like really get down to it, like, you could put Trey Harris back there, I guess. But he's been playing more and more on offense. Like, is that a
Did
guy
he
you
do
want
any
to
returning in college?
I think he might have returned like a couple of punts in college, maybe. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of teams do that in college where they just put their best receiver back there on punt returns. Like, Washington did that this season with Denzel Boston, even though he's not a super explosive guy, because it's basically just, we trust you the most to catch the ball from 50 feet out of the air. And
True.
so just go out there and catch the ball and let's get the offense on the field, because there's not 150 quality special teams coordinators to go around in college football. And so there's a lot of college teams that just, like, don't really practice special teams in any meaningful capacity. And so they're just kind of like, you go out there, catch the ball. Like, I don't care if you fair catch every time, doesn't matter. Just, like, go do that. And then the offense will be back on the field. So I think that that's probably more. I mean, I didn't watch Trey Harris special team snaps coming out, but I would assume that if he has some returning experience, it's probably more in that vein and less in like the, oh, he's super dynamic and like could really add something, value wise there, because he's also not like a super fast, like, straight line player either. So
looks like he had one punt return attempt and one kickoff return attempt as a freshman at Louisiana Tech. So
Nice. That's enough at this point. Go get out there. Let's do it.
yeah. Yeah, so just not in love with the options there. Darius Davis, you mentioned the Kylan Granson thing. 4'6", 540 Kylan Granson catching Darius Davis is not great. So it's unfortunate, man. Like they're gonna have to make a change there next season. I think it nowadays it's so difficult to have a punt returner and kickoff returner only player on the roster. With so many of these teams are putting, running backs at kickoff returner nowadays, that I'm curious what his, long-term future is there. But if Ladd is healthy, I guess I'm okay with it. He did have that one, return for a touchdown that got called back. So, that probably is their best option. But again, I just don't love having that high level of a starter returning punts. But we'll see what happens there. For what it's worth, Jaquay Jackson and Dalamon Campbell, the two receivers on the practice squad right now. I don't know how comfortable you are with either of those potentially returning kicks. And then running back wise, it's Jarrett Patterson, who they could have put at kickoff returner forever, and I don't think they've ever done that. And then Amar Johnson and Royce Freeman, who neither of them are, stereotypical like kickoff return specialists. Royce Freeman listed at 238 on the Chargers website, so probably not the thing that he
probably
wants
not
to
that
do.
one.
Yeah.
That's just Hassan Haskins and also Hassan Haskins out there at kick returner at that point.
Yeah. Just unfortunate though for Davis, after being, one of the 2 or 3 best returners as a rookie, and he's been kind of about league average over the last couple of seasons. And, we've had this like jarring change of returners where we went from like Andre Roberts and then Darius Davis's rookie season, and in between was like a really bad DeAndre Carter season and injured, Darius Davis. So it's just, it's unfortunate that position has not been stabilized as we would have hoped when they spent a 4th round pick on Darius Davis. So tough one there.
Wanted to get a starter. Remember that.
Yes. Very interested to see kind of what happens as well with the special teams group. No Troy Dye potentially this week, missing with a hip injury. And then Elijah Molden, man, another guy who just cannot catch a break. He's had a knee issue multiple times, a hamstring injury multiple times. He's been playing with screws in his hand this season. Thankfully, the Chargers are like relatively okay at safety, but just sucks. Like the guy who was, such high hopes for him after they signed him to that contract extension, and he's just been, snake bitten by injuries this season too.
Yeah, it's been brutal for my guy. Like oh, my voice. Like you said, they're doing okay at safety. I think even with Alohi in Baltimore, they're doing okay at safety. So it's not like the complete end of the world where it's like, oh, Kendall Williamson is going to have to play this week. Like they're not at that point, but it's just been unfortunate for him. Like, and I guess fortunately for the Chargers as a whole, right? Like because Molden has kind of been having this season all year, the guys behind him have gotten a lot of experience, and so you have guys that are ready to play. Mickens is ready to play. Jefferson's ready to play. Like those guys are ready to go. It's not like it's not like last season when you were pushing somebody into action off the street in week 15.
True.
So it's a little bit better than it was, but yeah, it's just been a tough season for Molden, who I think has like been pretty decent when he's been healthy.
Yeah.
Like so it's been brutal that he just like can't keep it together this year.
It's kind of like a jitterbug for this team, especially for like run defense purposes. Like last week against the Raiders, I thought he was outstanding. And when he's not been on his game, you can definitely feel, the Chargers run defense a little bit, kind of dialing back. And, same thing for Denzel Perryman and that group. So, it's unfortunate those 2 players. Trey Pipkins dealing with a bunch of injuries this season. That's unfortunately nothing new for Pipkins. He deals with a bunch of injuries all the time. So we'll see what happens there.
Most
finally
player in the league.
Yeah. Finally, from a slideshow perspective, before we get into the nitty gritty here, playoff chances. Chargers are currently at 77% after beating the Philadelphia Eagles with a win that jumps all the way up to 95%. This is according to the Athletics model, by the way. If they lose, it's not the end of the world. Falls down to 68%. So not a super swing in the negative if they lose, but if they win, obviously 95%, that's pretty close to clinching. That would give the Chargers 10 wins for the second season in a row as well. The Athletics model does currently project the Chargers as the 7 seed. ESPN FPI has the most likely seed for the Chargers as the 7 seed as well. I think part of that is that both of those models are probably predicting a Texans win in a couple of weeks against the Chargers, and that would obviously give them the tiebreaker. So from the Chiefs' perspective, currently at 12%. Again, I cannot believe that that's where the Chiefs are at right now. If they win, that does jump up to 19%. So, not dead in the water with the win, but if they lose, they're at less than 1% this week. So, again, the models are favoring the Chiefs this week. They are currently projecting the Chiefs at 9-8, which would be the 9 seed. So, still missing the playoffs, but the Chargers, man, can effectively end the Chiefs season this week in Kansas City, which is a crazy thing to say out loud, given just what this team has done over the last, 8-9 years with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's still unbelievable, even when it's laid out like this, right? Like, it's still unbelievable that, like, they're projecting them to go 3-1 down the stretch, and they're still out of the playoffs, with that projection, right? And so, I think if you brought anybody from August, to today, right, and you said, "Hey, the Chiefs are going to go 3-1 in the last 4 weeks of the season," they'd say, "Oh, okay, so they have the 1 seed then, right?"
Yeah, 1 seed or 2 seed, yeah.
Right, like 1 seed, 2 seed, like, easy division champion, or division championship again, like, must be, right? And no, here we are talking about like 3-1, and they might still be out. So it's just crazy to see. But yeah, I think, like, not the end of the world if the Chargers lose this one. Obviously would prefer if they win it, because then you're pretty much guaranteed at 95% there. But certainly workable if you lose. Just probably means that you have to beat the Texans, and or the Broncos probably in that Week 18 game. So I think, like, the Broncos might end up helping the Chargers out indirectly, either because they can beat the Chiefs in 2 weeks, and also because they might be in a position where they have the 1 seed, kind of either locked up, or they don't care about having the 1 versus the 2 by the time Week 18 rolls around, and the Chargers might not see the Broncos starters in that game, which gives the Chargers a good opportunity at a win in that scenario. Also, which again, like, if you look at the Athletics model for the record prediction, like, they're only giving the Chargers credit for one win down this stretch anyway. And so if that's Week 18 against the Broncos backups, like, win is a win, that still counts.
That's how the Broncos got in last year.
Right, exactly. And so, I think, temporary alliance with the Broncos here, maybe, just to make sure that the Chiefs are knocked out, and maybe kind of backdoor the Chargers in, even if they lose this one this week. But like we talked about earlier, it seems like maybe they probably should win this one. So that would certainly go a long way as well.
Yeah, so Broncos play the Packers this week at home, and then Jaguars, Chiefs, and then the Chargers. So the Broncos have a difficult schedule, and the Chiefs, the Patriots also have a tough schedule. So it's it's tough for both of those teams. I think for the Chargers, for me, like, the worst possible seeding arrangement here for the Chargers, and Tyler and I talked about this, is the outcome where the Chargers would have to travel to Denver back-to-back weeks. I have zero interest in seeing how that plays out. So if the Broncos are the 2 seed and the Chargers are the 7 seed, not a fan of that situation.
Yeah, I don't love that one.
So very much rooting for the Patriots to lose a couple of games in here, so the Broncos can get the 1 seed, as crazy as that sounds. But so a lot of playoff implications. We are in that time of year, obviously, in December. So we'll keep doing this every single week. We'll start. I added the seeding part here, and so that will change obviously as well. If the Chargers do beat the Chiefs, that does change the Athletics model to, I believe, the 6th seed. So a lot can change as these games unfold, and we'll continue to keep you guys updated as we go. All right. Before we get into the nitty gritty here of this matchup, we are going to take a quick break for our audio audience, and then we will be right back with more Chargers Chiefs preview for Week 15. Okay. Each week, Tyler and I do a coaching storyline that we are looking forward to watching. We've talked a lot about, obviously the heavy, protections for the offense. We've talked about, more man defense on more man coverage on the defense, pass rush, everything like that. This could be a coaching matchup. This could be, how do they exploit X, Y, or Z? So for you, Alex, when you're looking at this matchup between Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and their staffs, what is a storyline that kind of stands out to you?
I think the fact that the Chargers have played more man coverage over the last few weeks feels to me almost like it's been sort of a trial run for this game.
Mm,
Because we talked about earlier, right, that the Chiefs have struggled against man coverage this season because they don't really have like a true separator. Like that guy used to be Travis Kelsey. It's kind of supposed to be Rashee Rice this season, but he has not really performed up to that level this year. And so there's not really like the Chiefs don't have an answer against man coverage right now. Their answer against man coverage is basically Mahomes scrambles around for 4 or 5 seconds and then he throws it 50 yards down the field. And the Chargers don't give up explosive pass plays like that very often. Like
yeah.
they gave up one to Tyquan Thornton in the first game that these two teams played in Brazil, right? But like for the most part, like they're the second best team in the league at preventing explosive plays through the air. And so and then, factor in too that the Chiefs are going to have 2 backup tackles in the game. Like Esapole played well against the Texans last week, right? But like, it's an undrafted rookie. Like week to week, you're not necessarily getting the
Right.
most consistent performance. And like, look, Pole's my guy. Like, I'm glad that he played well last week, but I think expecting that he's gonna, shut out Khalil Mack or Tui Pelotu or Odafe Owe the same way he shut out Daniil Hunter is not necessarily um, a reasonable line of thought from either line, from either side there. And so if you can get, Patrick Mahomes has to get the ball out of his hands in 2.5, 3, even 3.5 seconds or something, right? Where you can't really get those explosive play opportunities. The Chiefs don't really have an answer against man coverage. I think like I'm interested to see if the Chargers continue playing that much man or if they kind of revert back to what their game plan was in week 1 when they played a little bit closer to like what this defense looked like last year in terms of a lot more of like that zone match they ran a ton of last year and kind of more heavy like cover 3 like the typical like Minter like Michigan style defense stuff, or if they continue to lean into that man coverage that they've been running more of the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a great one with man coverage. We talked about that a lot. And I was talking about this with our friend. Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the account's name right now. I'm gotta go find it really quickly. Not blah man. Football Insights. Apologies to our guy Football
Oh,
Insights. So I was asking him, because he always does the weekly thing about coverage numbers, and I
yeah.
had him go and look at like the man coverage rate for the Chargers throughout the season, and it's funny they ran like basically 0 man coverage against the Broncos in week 3. But they were above 20% in week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've been
Mm,
able to do that throughout, the 3 games that they've played against the Chiefs. But overall on the season, the last 2 weeks have been the most man coverage that the Chargers have ran in the season. Both of those games above 25%. Week 13 against the Raiders was above 30%. And I think part of this is that they've started to really lean into, these let's put 6 or 7 guys on the line of scrimmage. Let's do all these simulated pressures at a higher rate. Let's blitz at a higher rate. And part of this is that Cam Hart, your guy, my guy, is
let's
just
go.
playing out of his mind right now. Like
The
he was,
original Katz's Corner legend, Cam Hart, dude.
that's right. That's right. And we're starting to, we saw this a little bit last year where when Cam Hart was healthy, they were playing a lot more man coverage. And then Cam Hart got hurt and it was like, okay, here's heavy zone and stuff. And it makes a lot of sense. Now that they've kind of settled in with this, Cam Hart heavy package, because they were trying to do the Benjamin St. Juice thing for a little bit. That's
Yeah.
kind of like step down. And I think he played like okay, but Cam Hart played awesome football this past week, and he played really good against the Raiders the week before. Notwithstanding a couple of insane reps against Brock Bowers, but now that I feel like they have that guy who can press coverage and dude, you could tell he just loved going up against AJ Brown. Like that was just
Oh, yeah.
what he is made for. And I think we're gonna see them kind of get into more of this, Baltimore heritage that Jesse Minter has. And they love doing the Deion Henley spy thing when they can play man coverage as well. And we saw how effective that was this past week as well as week 1. And it's allowing Deion to play more free. So Cam Hart to me is like one of the most crucial players on the Chargers because he is like the main reason why they're able to go out there and play man coverage, because Dante Jackson having a great season. He's not really a press coverage man guy. He's definitely more of zone. And same thing for Tarib. Still good players, effective players, but when they want to press man, it's Cam Hart. And can they do that this week against the Chiefs? I think is super curious because they do so many crossing routes, and that's how they get Rashee Rice the football. But like you mentioned, that's how other teams have been stopping them. And so Cam Hart to me is like, the biggest X factor of the game, not to spoil, our later segment, but shout out Cam Hart, man. Katz's Corner legend.
Yeah, that's right. No, I'm so glad that you mentioned him because it is true. And like, I think back even as far back right to the Bengals game last year when they had him basically just man up against Jamar Chase the entire game. Like, you could see it even in that game. I think he got injured in that game. But you could see it in the parts of that game that he did play, that like this is the guy right now that they have where it's like you play a team that has like an elite number 1 wide receiver and you want to play kind of like, to borrow a basketball term, kind of like more box and one sort of coverage where like the rest of it is zone and you just have this guy play man on man. Like, like the Rams did with Brandon Staley when they had Jalen Ramsey, right? Like Brandon Staley wanted to do this with JC Jackson. It never worked. And here we are, a few years later, and we were able to do that with Cam Hart. And so, that game against Jamar Chase, like, against AJ Brown last week, like there's going to be a couple of plays where he gets beat. He's a 2nd-year player, is a 5th-round pick going up against Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, like those caliber receivers. Like there's going to be a few where he gives up those plays. But for the most part, right, like I think, a huge aspect of playing corner is you have to have a short memory on stuff like that. It's like he gets flagged early covering AJ Brown last week. He gets beat on a couple of those, like the 2nd or 3rd quarter, and like just stays in it and stays in it and stays in it and stays in it. And like, eventually, like it all builds up to like he gets the interception. He has that tipped, obviously, to win the game at the end of that game. Like he's been playing at a really high level, even though like, there's been a little bit of variance just down to down because they're asking him to take on some really tough matchups. Yeah. And so like, I think it's interesting too, right? Because like, I think you've seen that when they want to get into more coverage, when they want to, or man coverage, excuse me, when they want to do more of that stuff, it's typically against teams that have a bigger physical receiver like this, right? Where it's like, okay, like we can put Cam Hart on Brock Bowers for part of the game. We can put Cam Hart on AJ Brown. Yeah. The Chiefs don't really have a guy like that unless you just want to put Cam Hart on Travis Kelce. But like that's traditionally been Derwin's job. And so like I'm interested to see like how all that sort of plays out of like, do they go to that much man coverage, right? And use Cam Hart as that matchup piece? Because again, it is so much crossers and so much like, more stuff that like Hart tends to struggle a little bit more with. Like all of that stuff moving horizontally. And so I'm a little bit curious to see like kind of how they end up deploying him because, if you put him on Rashee Rice, like Rice is dynamic enough that like you can get some horizontal separation maybe.
Sure.
It's really interesting. I'm really fascinated to see what they end up doing with that one.
Yeah, so I also chose a defensive Chargers defense versus Chiefs offense thing here. The Chiefs are 8th in the league in 12 personnel usage. And again, a lot of that is, they use Travis Kelce as a big wide receiver, essentially. Their EPA per rank is actually 16th out of that, which again, kind of figuring out what's changed for the Chiefs over the years. It's probably that. And my biggest curiosity with this is, against the Raiders, the Chargers did some funky fronts where they were, they would put Deion Henley on the edge and they would have 2 edge rushers on the opposite side, and Deion would be next to 2 defensive tackles, and really mixing up ways to try and steal some gaps against the Raiders, who also play a lot of 12 personnel on offense, obviously with Brock Bowers. And then this past week, when the Eagles were in 12 personnel, they matched a lot with base packages, which we haven't really seen a ton of out of this Chargers defense. And so I think Jesse Minter is trying to find ways where they can steal some gaps and take some double teams off of these young defensive tackles. And, I think a few of the Eagles' biggest, successful runs were when, the Chargers were in nickel and they would have, Jamari Caldwell and Otito Ogbonia together, or Jamari and Justin Eboigbe together. And there's just such a big difference when Tier Tart is not on the field. And I'm curious to see how does that come about this week, because it's, in my opinion, with the Chiefs and their backup tackles, and, Pole is a better run blocker than pass protector, I would say, based off of what I watched. But
Yeah.
Travis Kelce and Noah Gray are not exactly like scaring me from a run blocking perspective. They're not Tucker Fisk and Scott Malak from a size perspective. And so how does Jesse Minter match up with that? Does he treat them like wide receivers? Does he play more nickel? Does he do a lot of the Dayon Henley stuff where he's on the line of scrimmage? Because I just don't think when the Chiefs do go under center, they're actually like really effective running the football. I don't believe that you can just match up with Otito Ogbonia, Justin Eboigbe, and Jamari Caldwell and these guys in nickel and just say, hey, go beat double teams, because they're not doing that right now. It's very much a weak point of the Chargers defense. And so how does Jesse Minter counteract that to potentially create a lot of negative runs? Because if you can get the Chiefs into a negative game script, I think that's where you can really see, the defense shine this week and, potentially be able to create some havoc for Patrick Mahomes. But keep an eye on that, because the Chiefs run game overall is not great, but when they get under center on, the 4 or 5 times that they do, they're able to create some, gashes. And I'm curious to see how Jesse Minter matches that.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing too, because I think this is going to be a very big story of the first quarter of this game, because the Chiefs
Yeah.
have shown this season that if you stuff them on a few of those early runs, they'll just give up on it. Like, they will just go away from it. They'll just stop doing it for the rest of the game. They're just like, that's not part of the game plan anymore. Like, we're just going to go to all shotgun run. We're going to go to all RPO. Like, we're just going to spread it out. We're going to get out of this. And so if in the first quarter, right, especially, you can get, you match personnel a little bit more, maybe you treat the tight ends a little bit more like tight ends and not wide receivers. You bring in, I don't know who the third linebacker is, right, with Troy Dye maybe not playing, right, but you get into a little bit more base. You have Dayon do more of that Dayon stuff. You have Derwin do more of the stuff at the line of scrimmage that he's been doing, kind of on and off this season. And you stuff some of those early under center runs, then the Chiefs will just stop doing that. And right now, that's the best part of the Chiefs running offense, when other than Patrick Mahomes scrambling, right? And so if you take that away from them, then it's like, okay, well, now we know from watching the Chiefs all season that they're not going to try to they're not even going to try to get back to that. And so now we can play nickel the entire rest of the game. We can play dime the entire rest of the game, because they're just going to go complete spread, air raid, RPO heavy off. They're going to play a college offense essentially for the rest of the game, and they're never going to go under center. They're never going to try to run the ball again. We're like, okay, fine. And then we can just go to nickel and we can do the stuff that we want to do. Right. And so I think even if it only ends up being relevant, a relevant point for the first quarter or the first, 20 minutes of the game or something like that, I think it's a huge part of this game, because if it is relevant for the full game, that probably means that the Chargers didn't do a very good job of defending it. Yeah. And so then it became a storyline for the entire game. But if they do a good job of defending it, it's probably only going to be a storyline for the first third of the game.
Yeah. I think kind of branching off of that, to me, is one thing I'm actually really excited to watch in this game. And that's Mr. Trevor Penning's role in this game. Not going to start at offensive tackle. I believe that will be Bobby Hart. But Penning actually had 8 snaps on offense this past week. I think that is a direct correlation to not having Tucker Fisk. And the Chargers, in those runs where they had Trevor Penning out there, they actually ran behind him and they ran well. And Omari Hampton had a big gain at the end of the game, and Kamani Vidal had a big gain at the end of the game. And if they're not going to have Tucker Fisk the rest of the season, which he's on injured reserve, so they're not going to have him, to me, they should absolutely lean into the Trevor Penning snaps. And I'm not just talking as a run blocker, I'm talking as a pass protector as well, because defensively, how do you steal gaps? Offensively, how do you create bigger pocket windows for your quarterback? And this game against the Kansas City Chiefs, where they're going to blitz the hell out of Justin Herbert, because they all watched Nakobe Dean, get free rushes up the middle for 4 or 5 times last week. And Spags is just at that point where he is going to live and die by the blitz. And how do you, as the Chargers offense, create some advantages that way? And I kind of have this theory that Greg Roman is very willing to keep extra blockers in, but only if he knows you are going to be a blitz heavy team. If he thinks if you're going up a simulated pressure team like the Eagles, then he's going to expect Bradley Bozeman and company to figure it out. But if you're going to be a blitz heavy team like the Steelers, like the Vikings, etc., he's willing to keep extra guys in. And so is that Trevor Penning? Is that Scott Matlock, who quietly has looked pretty good the last few weeks? Is that the running backs, etc.? I think, to me, we've talked about this a bunch, but keep 6 blockers out there as much as you possibly can. Sacrifice having that extra route out there. Put Trevor Penning next to Bobby Hart or Jamari Sawyer and just wad things up as much as you can. And then from a run blocking perspective, we've highlighted the outside run games all year long. And people last week were like, oh, well, the Eagles did such a great job against toss. Like, what are they supposed to do? Well, they put Trevor Penning out there and they just run a simple, trap or wham with Zion Johnson and Trey Harris leading around, and Marion Hampton's gone for 18 yards. I thought it was the best stuff they did on offense was the Trevor Penning snaps, weirdly enough. So I'm excited to see if they lean into this or not, or if this is another Greg Roman, shit game plan that I'm going to be frustrated at watching. Because to me, you should lean into what does well, and Trevor Penning did well as a run blocker, and it just allows the Chargers to create some extra space, steal some gaps, get the running backs on the edges, and that was the best thing they did last week against the Eagles.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Justin is going to be very well acquainted with Drew Tranquil again this week. Because you look at Nakobe Dean on those A-gap blitzes, and it's oh, that's exactly what Drew Tranquil does every week. That's
every week
he's on the team for.
Yes.
So I think that's definitely going to be something to look out for. But yeah, I mean, when we were having this discussion initially, when Trevor Penning got traded to the Chargers, right? It was okay, well, who starts at left tackle? Obviously, they make that trade for Trevor Penning to hopefully try to start him at left tackle. And then, they lie and they say, oh, well, actually, it was because Jamari Sawyer wasn't healthy, and that's why he wasn't playing. But now he's going to start at left tackle. But, the argument really at that point was, when Jamari Sawyer is the left tackle and he's the end man on the line of scrimmage at left tackle, the Chargers cannot get to as much of the stuff that they want to get to in the run game.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is, right? And you saw that in the Titans game when he came in for Joe Alt when Alt got injured in that game, right? The Chargers had a very specific game plan about what they wanted to do in the run game in that game, and they were not able to do it because Jamari Sawyer just doesn't move that well. He's not a guy that can get out into space. He's not a guy that can pull off some of those trap blocks, those wham blocks. He can't move like that. But now, right, with these Trevor Penning snaps, this was the argument, right? Is well, if you want the run game to remain consistent, you start Trevor Penning, you start Austin Deculus, whoever it is, right, at that point. And they have a little bit more movement to them, one of Kamani's 100-yard games was behind Austin Deculus at left tackle. You can get into a little bit more of the run game stuff, which is where Greg Roman is a at least average offensive coordinator, right? The run game stuff is Greg Roman's specialty. That's what he is there for. And so if you want to lean into more of that stuff, you have to have the personnel in order to lean into it. Obviously, now you're at a point where Jamari Sawyer has to start at left tackle because he's the only one that will not lead to Justin Herbert getting hit 10 times off the left side.
Yeah.
But how do you still get into that stuff in the run game, right? You put Trevor Penning in as the de facto left tackle, right? Because he's the end man on the line of scrimmage on the left side playing jumbo tight end. And then you just have Trevor Penning do all of the run block stuff. And then you get the best of both worlds. And so like I said, I really agree with you in terms of the Trevor Penning snaps last week. I thought it was some of the best stuff that they did because it's a creative way to get into the stuff that is working in your run game, right? And so, I want to see more of that. I want to see more Trevor Penning and Scott Matlock on the field. I never thought I would say that. It's insane for even at this point. But it has looked good when they've put it on the
Yeah.
field. And like this Chiefs defense is gettable if you do stuff like that, right? Like
Yeah.
they will give up, some of that stuff up the middle because they are going to be so aggressive, and they're going to send, like they're going to send a corner off the edge. They're going to send, like they're going to send people. And so if you have the bodies to do that, right? Like I talk about all the time with people like all over the country, right? About like as an offense, you have to decide like whether you are an offense that reacts to what the defense gives you, or whether you are an offense that dictates how the
Yeah.
game is going to go.
Yeah.
And I think that too often the Chargers are a reactionary offense under Greg Roman, where like you kind of come out and it almost looks like you didn't expect the defense to do what they're doing. And now you're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, what do we do? And I think that this is a really good way for the Chargers to dictate how the offense operates and how that part of the game operates when they have the ball this week. Because if you do that, like the Chiefs eventually are going to have to make that adjustment. They're going to have to be
Yeah.
the ones to adjust rather than the Chargers adjusting, right? And like we've seen too often, right? Like the Chargers have had to be the team that adjusts when they have the ball. And Greg Roman is not a very good think on your feet coordinator. I think we've proven that through, almost 2 seasons of the experience so far. But if you're able to dictate the game, I think that like those
Yeah.
are the games that we've seen the best of this Greg Roman offense is when
Yeah.
he's able to get to the stuff that he planned to do all week. And he's like, cool, it worked, you know? So I think it's a great point.
Yeah, and it's going to be like 20 degrees at kickoff on Sunday. So just just get in the heavy personnel packages. I was going back and forth on some of the YouTube comments this past week because some people who believe in Greg Roman for whatever reason were like, "Oh, they ran the ball like 35 times last week. Like, what do you want?" Justin Herbert scrambled on 8 times last week, so and he pulled it on 2 zone reads that were not zone reads. So I think for me, the best path forward for the Chargers offense, with the status of their offensive line where they're injured at tackle, the right guard is an atrocity right now. And you have to just run the football like 40 times a game. Like you just have to get in heavy personnel packages and just let Vidal and Hampton carry you through the playoffs. And like that's their method of success. Like if you try and get into these straight drop back games, it's not going to work because your offensive line can't hold up. And then your passing concepts are the worst in the league right now by a mile. And if they can run the football, they'll be okay in these games. But this week in particular, if they trot out, 11 personnel and 7-step drops and 5-step drops, Herbert's going to get crushed again in the pocket. So I just think you have, like you're saying, you have to come out and set the tone, and you have to come out and run the football. And if you do that, I think you should be able to win. And you have 2 great running backs, and you are a good run game coordinator. And I think that is where I'm at, where you just have to lean into the run game as much as possible. Otherwise, Herbert's just going to keep getting sacked 5, 6, 7 times every game. And I don't want to watch that. I'm not interested in seeing my quarterback get sacked 7 times a game and scramble 10 times. And it's just not sustainable. So run the football, be Greg Roman, and stop trying to do these straight drop back stuff. And I think they'll be okay. What are you excited to watch this week?
I'm excited for more Tony Jefferson snaps. We talked about it a little bit earlier, right? Like, and it's a very high level thing, right? Like, it's not like, to the same level of detail, but like Elijah Molden is probably going to miss this game. He hasn't practiced all week. Like, it's trending that way that he's going to miss this game, which means more RJ Mickens, more Tony Jefferson. But like, we talked about it when we were talking about Tony Jefferson doubling his career reception total earlier, right? Like, some of the best stuff that Tony Jefferson has put on tape has been the run defense. Like, the interceptions have gotten all the publicity, right? Because I mean, the last 2, right? Like, are both incredible plays. Like, both of them are like, okay, like here goes Tony Jefferson on a tip drill, like, falling out of bounds and getting both feet down, getting both knees down, or whatever. Like, that's cool and everything, like, and I'm glad that he's making those plays because like it's the way that he's been playing all year going back to the preseason, right? Like, this is why this podcast advocated for him to make the 53-man roster initially. And it remains a travesty that he did not, but but it's been remedied now. And he's playing really well. Like, he's playing good football. And he didn't get to play in the first version of this game, right? They had Elijah Molden out there. And Molden was very clearly limited in that week 1 game. I think that was very obvious that he was still healing from that leg injury he had in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember anecdotally if he played very much. I want to say he didn't play a ton. I think they went more to just like Alohi single high stuff. But also I was in the stadium, and so I wasn't watching the broadcast and paying attention to that sort of thing, like necessarily like down to down. But when he was on the field, like it was just very clear that like he wasn't moving the same. Like he just didn't seem like the same player that we saw last year.
Yeah.
And so, this week, right? Like you get into more like, okay, Tony Jefferson and RJ Mickens are, your safeties playing deep when Derwin comes down the line of scrimmage. You want to put 3 safeties on the field to match 12 personnel, or you just want Derwin on Travis Kelce because it's 3rd down or whatever, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
Tony Jefferson and RJ Mickens, those are the guys that you have. Those are guys you're going to put back there. And like Tony Jefferson is playing, like I keep saying it, I'm sorry I don't have more detail to this, right? But it's just like Tony Jefferson's playing well. That's cool. Like it's cool that he's playing this well.
Yeah, I agree. It's it's the week of the Unk coming back, and obviously Philip Rivers is potentially in line to start this week for the Indianapolis Colts, which is
that's
insane.
actually what I'm most excited about. I'm most excited to watch Philip Rivers play football.
Most excited for the post-game press conference of Philip Rivers after that. But Tyler highlighted the unks of the team a few weeks ago, and they've got some defensive players that are older, and Tony Jefferson is like having his best season as a pro at age 33 after retiring and being a scout a few years ago. So it just is such a cool story on defense, and I think that's where we're at. I think RJ Mickens has put out some good tape as well the last few weeks, and he's taking
a lot better.
He's taking much better angles in the run game, and obviously he kind of got against Devon Achane, but that happens. He's a guy who does that a lot. So I think they're in good shape as long as Molden can come back and be not super injured next year. I think they're in good shape with those two, as well as I'm not going to put a limit on if Jefferson wants to come back. He can definitely do that. So the safety spot is just in a good group overall. We've kind of highlighted, I think, the Chiefs blitzing is probably the thing that we're most concerned about in this game, or Chris Jones. Is there anything else that's keeping you up at night about this matchup besides those two aspects of the Chiefs defense?
I think just the fact, like, I went into this podcast kind of being like, okay, we kind of got to do away with the Chiefs mystique. Like, it's not the same as it's been in years past and everything. But like, at the end of the day, like when it gets to Saturday night, like I will be losing sleep over the fact that like it's the Chiefs. They're playing the Chiefs tomorrow. Like, I don't care that they're only 6-7. I don't care that they look awful. Like, I'm concerned about it being the Chiefs. And so, like all the stuff that we talked about defensively, like I think like, if you want to get in the nitty gritty of like why it's concerning that it's the Chiefs, right? But like, at the end of the day, at a very high level, like it's just like I don't care how poorly they're playing. Like I'm concerned about it being the Chiefs until the Chargers win a game at Arrowhead, and then I will lessen that concern, as we continue on.
Yeah, and if the Chargers win this game, they'll be 5-0 in the AFC West, and sweeping the Raiders 2 years in a row. Would have swept the Chiefs for the first time. Like, I don't even know. I'd have to look that up actually, because they've just been dominated by the Chiefs for such a long time. It just is. It's a very interesting spot for the Chargers where you're Monday Night Football, this amazing win. Harbaugh says it's up there with the birth of his children and his wedding. You're on a short week. 10 a.m. kicks have been brutal for the Chargers so far this season. Dealing with some injuries. I think
especially road 10 a.m. kicks.
Yeah, road 10 a.m. kicks. This is not necessarily East Coast, but it's still Central Time, so you're not losing a full 3 hours. But this is an environment where the Chargers this season have really, really struggled. But they've kind of talked about this is the competitive season that Harbaugh has brought up, and there's been certainly a lot more urgency after the bye. I feel like overall as a team, more physicality. So I think I'm on the same page as you, where I think the Chargers should win this game. But if they kind of sleptwalk through this game, I also would not be surprised, because they've done that several times this season. It
Yeah.
also depends what version of the Chiefs we're getting. So I think on paper, I'm feeling pretty good, but at the same time, like there's so many factors from like a motivational standpoint that we just don't know. The Chiefs could have nothing to play for. They could be, just giving up on the season, or they could, have nothing to lose. And hey, let's spoil the season of our rivals. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty with, the emotional aspect of this game that I think is always an underrated thing when, especially like we do a lot of X's and O's and numbers and stuff, but sometimes it's just like who wants the game more. And I think the Chiefs could certainly just come out and say, hey, you know what? Like our season's on the ropes. Like, what do we have to lose here?
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
So I think we highlighted a couple of X factors here. For me, like the running backs are going to be, a big aspect here. The corners, especially Cam Hart that we mentioned, Deion Henley, we've seen, talked about a little bit here. Any other X factors you want to bring up tonight?
I think whichever receiver is not playing against Trent McDuffie, kind of the same thing that I would have said last week of just like whichever receiver is not matched up against Quinyon Mitchell, right? Like,
Right.
I think the Chargers did a good job last week. I know that like the individual stat lines were not very impressive, but also like the individual stat line for Justin Herbert was not super impressive. But like I thought that they did a really good job of spreading the ball around, just taking what the Eagles were giving them. Like, I think that needs to continue, right? Like, you have another
Yeah.
team that, like, I know McDuffie is limited. I know he hasn't had the same season that he's had in the past, but like, it's still at a point where it's like, we talked about earlier, right? Like, the Chiefs don't have a corner two on the roster right now. They're trying to find who that guy is still, and we're in, week 15 of the season. So, like, just attack that guy seems like a good plan to me, right? Like, whoever it is, if you want to get Quentin Johnson on, some more like I've struggled with their usage of Quentin in the last few weeks. Like I know they want to get him on some more of that like vertical stuff and more of that, more of that deeper stuff because he's kind of the only guy that they have right now that can do some of that with Keandre Lambert Smith not active, but also like they're kind of trying to get him design touches, but then they're not, and then they are, and then they're not. Like it's just like I'm struggling with kind of like the way that they're going. Obviously, like I think Lad, like I'm not reading too much into Lad, like not really having a great game last week. Like obviously now we know he's dealing with a foot injury, but also like he's on Cooper DeJean most of that game. They tried to find him on a few of those. It's just like Cooper DeJean is, one of the best slot corners
He's
in the league.
unreal, dude.
It is what it is.
Unreal.
Like, yeah,
I've never seen Lad get blanketed like that before.
Yeah,
Ever.
that
like even
that
in college.
post
Like,
down the middle that DeJean knocked away with his front hand.
insane.
Initially on the broadcast, I was like, that has to be pass interference. I've never seen anyone get in front of a pass like that against Lad McConkey. And then, like Lad kind of goes up for it as if his arm is getting held. And I'm like, that must be pass interference. Then they show the replay and it's like, no, that's just unreal coverage.
He's just insane.
Like it's
Cooper
just
DeJean's crazy.
So I'm not worried about Lad there. Like obviously like Keenan is going to do the stuff that Keenan does, and like but like the Chargers have done a very good job this season of like spreading it around to that top four, right? Of Keenan, Lad, Quinton, Oronde Gadsden, like all four of those guys are getting theirs, every game. And it might only be a little bit every game, but they're all getting theirs. And so I think like, whoever is not on McDuffie and whoever can kind of take advantage of like whether it's Noel Williams or Jalen Watson, or if they dust off Christian Fulton, like, whatever they want to do, right? Like, I think that getting it to whoever that guy is and kind of trying to work a little bit more of that, like I think that is going to be important for them when they do actually drop back and pass it.
Yeah, I think the most disappointing thing of like how the offensive line stuff has gone is that they're just not able to get these pass catchers going at all. And some of this is obviously Greg Roman related, where they're like, I'm sitting there watching the tape this week and they're running so many damn vertical routes against the Eagles when they can't pass protect. And I'm like,
there's not the time for those to get open.
Where are the screens? Where are the flat routes? Where are the quick game? Like they threw a quick game.
Where's the entire playbook from the Dolphins game?
Yes.
What happened to that? Did you lose that half of the playbook? Did you leave it in Miami? Like, where is it?
Yes. I was so frustrated sitting there watching just deep route, deep route, deep route, deep route. I'm like, what are we doing against this defense? We are trying to get long developing routes. So I like there are some people, and there's in the chat and online that are like, where's Led McConkey, where's Quentin Johnston? Mina Kimes and Ben Solak were talking on their podcast where Herbert only actually attempted a pass on like 60% of his dropbacks this last week, which is insanely low because he was either getting sacked or he was scrambling because he was gonna get sacked.
Right.
And so there's just got to be a bridge where like this offensive coaching staff just has to look at how difficult they are making things from a passing perspective. Like, just get these young weapons and Keenan some easy buttons and get them going. You don't have to, throw the football 12 yards down the field every single snap. So
Yeah.
I would just love to see them get these guys some easy passes to get going, because they're all blocking their asses off, man. I know Gadsden's not like great in the blocking department, but Ladd and Trey and Keenan and Quentin, they will absolutely get in there and scrap from a run blocking perspective. And I would like to see them get rewarded with some easier yards instead of just making things so difficult every single week and then running mesh 14 times a week because that's the only play call you like. So it's just, the passing offense is so frustrating. Like I was furious after the game, and watching the tape, I was even more mad. Like it's such a bad passing environment for these pass catchers. It drives me bonkers.
Because the thing is too, right? Like, even if you have the time to complete some of those longer developing routes, there's still a lower percentage play. Like, and you're not getting these receivers involved in the game at all, right? You're basically asking, like, it's almost as if you're asking them to come off the bench cold and go run a 30-yard post and then just come, like, they're like, we talked about the emotional aspect of it when we were talking about just like, oh, we're going to lose sleep because it's the Chiefs, right? And like, maybe the Chiefs just come out and they want it more, right? There's also an emotional aspect to it of like, you have to get guys involved in the game, right? Like, people have to feel like they're in the flow of the game. And the best way to do that right now is to get them some of those easy plays, right? Like, throw a smoke screen to Ladd McConkey, throw a smoke screen to Quentin Johnston, tap into some of that RPO stuff and throw an alert to McConkey, throw an alert to Gadsden, right? Like, they have done that stuff this season. Like, we've seen them do it. But they're not going to that right now, and I think that they're just like, they're bashing their head against the wall of just like, the offense, like, this is the week that the offensive line will be fine. This is the week. This is the week. This is the week. And it's like, Justin Herbert has a broken hand. Let him just get the ball out. Like, let him get it out in 1.2 seconds. And let, like, all of your receivers are good creators after the catch, with the exception of maybe Keenan, and that's just because he's 34, right? Like, but like everybody else, like the other three guys that you're throwing the ball to most of these plays, right? They're good creators after the catch. Like, that's what Quentin Johnston's best skill is. Rondé Gadsden's basically a wide receiver. Ladd McConkey has shown that ability. Like, that's what these guys are good at. Let them go do that instead of like, make them go up and catch a 50-50 ball against Cooper DeJean on a post, right? Like, make Quentin Johnston go up and catch a 50-50 ball, like, running down the sideline. Like, just like, get them involved in the game a little bit, and then you can try to get to some of that stuff. And it's just so frustrating. Like, it's so crazy every week to just see like, oh, there they go. Like, like you mentioned, like, people are asking like where they are. And it's like, well, probably like 20 yards down the field while Justin is running for his life. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like so they get that nice run from Omari Hampton with like 40 seconds left at the end of the regulation. So they have 2 plays, no timeouts essentially, and I think this was Dicker's like 48-yard field goal to send it into overtime. And so you have 2 plays left, and you're in range, relatively speaking, of potentially going to score a touchdown still. And they run this route concept where Trey Harris and they're in a 2x2 set with Trey Harris and Quentin on one side, Ladd and Gadsden on the other side. And they just run a clear out route and then 2 overs underneath. And I'm like, what are you doing? If you throw the ball where it's supposed to go, the game is over.
Right.
And you're giving Justin Herbert 0 options in that moment to go win the football game. Like, you could have won the football game with a touchdown. The situational play calling is so frustrating right now.
It's
not to make this a big Greg Roman rant, but I just was hoping, like, when they assemble this coaching staff, okay, you bring in Greg Roman, you have Shane Day, who ran the Justin Herbert offense for 2 years, you have Marcus Brady, Like we're gonna see some new, modern passing offenses, and it's the same damn Greg Roman playbook we've seen for Baltimore, San Francisco the entire time. So just you're making it so difficult on yourself, Greg. Just do the easy stuff. Like just call a quick game and throw it to not Will Dissly. Like it's so frustrating. There's a lot of like hate out there again for Quentin, and Ladd's disappointing this season. They're not getting smart touches. Like they are
replace all of the quick game stuff to Will Dissly with quick game stuff to Oronde Gadsden. That doesn't even seem like it's that hard. It's the same position.
So anyways, I think that's our rant on Greg Roman. We'll wrap this up. Predictions for this final game score. You've said you're kind of leaning towards the win. I think I'm also leaning towards the win. Is that what you're going to put your stamp on it? And if so, what's the score you got?
I think I am going to, but I think it is going to be close because it is going to be, it's going to be an emotional game. It's going to be, it's going to be a tough game. Like it just is. Like it's the Chiefs. Like just like the Raiders is a tough game every time they play the Raiders, even though the Raiders are terrible, right? Like it's a tough game still. I think that probably something similar-ish to what the score last week was. I would maybe, I would probably say like 23-20, 24-21, somewhere in that range. Like, a field goal win for the Chargers, somewhere in like that low 20 range.
Yeah, I think I'm of the same mindset. I think this is going to be how every game for the Chargers, like if they have their way, it's going to be very much like, just drag these teams into field goal games, and they have Cam Dicker and, Harrison Butker's good, I guess, but he's been not great this year. So I just think that the method of success for the Chargers is lean on our defense, lean on our run game. And I think if they do that properly, I think they can win this game. If they try and go shot for shot with Patrick Mahomes, it's not going to go well, even with this state of the Chiefs offense. So I think they are going to realize that 20 degrees at kickoff and the way that the running backs are playing, they'll be able to do that. So I'm going to also say a win. I'm going to go lower than you. I think I'm gonna go like 2017 officially for me.
I think that's
I just think with this, the cold and the way that these offenses are playing, I don't expect a ton of points either way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Definitely. I think the Chargers definitely are kind of at a point where like they would like to win every game, probably 10-7 with like 40 minutes of time of possession. And I think that that's good. I think that they need to be in that mode. I think that's where they need to be living right now. So I'm glad that they think that way. But it also means that, it's not necessarily going to always be the most entertaining brand of football to watch. So, that is what it is. Decide what you want more. Do you want to watch an entertaining team or do you want to watch a winning team? Because it right now with the Chargers, it kind of feels like it's one or the other. So
to open the second half, they had that 9-minute field goal drive. I'm like, it was ugly, but it was exactly the drive that they needed. They ran the football. They protected Herbert on that drive. Like they probably just got to lean into that kind of methodology here. Alex, any other final thoughts here before we wrap up today's show with some super chats?
I don't think so. Cam Dicker is the GOAT. That's I mean, that's the only part of the game we haven't touched on. Like the special teams for the Chargers has been good. Like, I mean, Cam Dicker has certainly been good. I think J.K. Scott's been a lot better the last few weeks. Both from a punting perspective, but also I think that the punt coverage unit has been a lot better. I think getting Dean Leonard back has helped a lot. I think that's been very, very clear. And so, like the special teams have played a lot better. I think there's just been a lot of focus on like the return units have been bad. And the kickoff coverage unit is still a little bit up and down sometimes, but like the field goal unit has been good the whole season. Cam Dicker's been great the whole season. The punting unit is getting a lot better. So I'm less concerned about that kind of as we get into the stretch run, but certainly going to be an important game for that too, because anytime it starts to get that cold, like kicking gets harder, punting gets harder, the ball is harder, so kicking and punting get harder. So I think that will be something that will be rather important as well.
There's that great account on Twitter, Puntalytics, which does punter EPA. J.K. Scott 5th in punt EPA this season, so it's been a good season for him.
Been a huge rise too, because like at the bye week, I think he was like 15th or 16th. Like so, he's been very, very good the last few weeks. Like the last really like the last month or two. He's been very, very good.
Yeah, a lot of hang time, a lot more hang time than it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So wondering, like, be very curious to ask him, like, hey man, like this kind of coincides with Josh Harris coming back, but like, why is
Right.
that? You know,
Right.
obviously, like there are bad snaps and things like that, but if if the previous guy has a good snap to you and Harris has a good snap to you, like what's the difference? I would just be really curious about
Yeah.
like
I
seeing
do
that.
I do wonder if part of it might just be that Harris is snapping the ball to him faster. Like,
Mm,
because Rick Lovato was old, and
yeah.
like we know he was old. He retired after Josh Harris came back, right? Like the week that
Yeah.
Josh Harris came back, he decided actually like I don't have it anymore, right? So like I do wonder if it might just be that like it was just taking that like extra quarter of a second longer to get the ball
Sure.
to him, and so he was feeling a little bit more of that pressure and was just like, I just need to get it off, and not really worrying about like hitting a good ball. I'm just trying to get it off without getting it blocked. So, but
Sure.
yeah, I would be fascinated to ask him. I would love a direct line to J.K. Scott if anyone's got one.
Yeah. Yeah. This is definitely the podcast to talk about that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
all right, let's get to some of our super chats here and then we'll head out for tonight. Giovanni Sandoval says hire more for LOL coach as soon as he's out of jail. Crazy situation up in Michigan, Sharon Moore getting fired and all that stuff. I think it's going to be a while before he can get a job. I think he's still in jail, if I'm not mistaken. So, a lot of things to sort out there from a legal perspective before Sharon Moore is doing anything from a football standpoint.
Yeah, certainly agree there. I think on field, like I'm good with him as an offensive line coach. I know like people are making the connection obviously because of Harbaugh and everything, but also like I would like to just point out that like I don't think the Spanos family will ever approve hiring him with everything that has occurred. So
Correct.
probably not. But I certainly understand people making those connections, and hope that situation resolves the best that it can for everybody involved.
Yeah. I just feel awful for his family. Like he
Yeah,
has like relatively like older kids too. So
yeah.
that is not a good situation for those kids. Next from CityBert2826 wants to know how screwed are the Chargers if they lose? If they only win versus Dallas and Chiefs run the table, they will both be 10-7 and KC wins tiebreaker.
So I did run the Athletics playoff predictor for if the Chargers only win the Dallas game and lose their other three games, and they still have a 43% chance of getting in. So I would say not that screwed. Obviously, if the Chiefs run the table, if the Chiefs run the table, that like those two results combined bring the Chargers down to 1%. But I also think that like that's presumptive in the sense that it means that the Chiefs would also have to beat the Broncos. And like
Mhm.
So I guess it would just sort of depend on like how the Chiefs win this game, right? Like if the Chiefs win this game and they look like they're back and suddenly all the talking points on Monday morning are the Chiefs are back, they look like a Super Bowl team again, then like yeah, sure, I guess you can be concerned about that. But if it's just sort of like the Chargers fall on the other end of the coin flip that they fell on in this Eagles game, and they lose 22-19 in like a game that has 10 field goals in it, then like I don't know that I'm that confident that the Chiefs will beat the Broncos also. And so like, yeah, like the Chargers will certainly have some work to do. It'll not
Yeah.
be the best position to be in, but like, we talked about it earlier of like still a 68% chance of with just losing this game and no other results after that. And then like, like I said, if they only beat Dallas, you're still at 43%, with no other results. So certainly not like a season ending, catastrophic loss, but would certainly depend on kind of what kind of loss it is and what the vibes are like, going into Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So the Chiefs obviously have the Titans and the Raiders in the final 4 weeks, which is like what a gift from the schedule gods there. But
Right.
um, I don't have a ton of faith that this offense can go beat the Broncos right now, just given the way that the Broncos can play defense. And I don't love Bo Nix, but the Broncos just kind of feel like that team of the year where they're just going to win all these one score games and then, we'll see what happens in the playoffs. But the Chargers, obviously, like if they can win tomorrow and another game, like that would be great. So if the Chargers only win against the Cowboys, then we're talking about a relatively like dicier situation. Um, the other thing to keep in mind here is that the Chiefs would they would have the tiebreaker against the Chargers there, but they lost to the Jaguars. They lost to the Texans. So there's some other
Lost to the
tiebreakers here.
Colts.
Yeah, well, they beat the Colts, but the Colts are out
Oh,
of it.
sorry. I thought you were talking about the Chargers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Chargers lost to the Colts. Yes, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of other tiebreakers here. Like you could be in like a 5-way tie at 10-7 for the final, 2 spots here. We'll see what happens with the Bills, but I just these two teams, like there are other teams here that we have to talk about. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, it would be great for the Chargers if they don't make this a thing and just win tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Sunday.
Yep.
Alex Bridgeforth wants to know which 5 current Chargers do you think make the Hall of Fame? I don't think there are 5.
I think if the Chargers had 5 current Hall of Famers on the team, we would not be as concerned about this game or any other game as we are.
No, so it's people have Chargers fans will think that Keenan Allen will make it, and I think he could like eventually, but these receivers that are still not Hall of Famers, like Steve Smith is 4th or 5th in receiving yards all time. He's not a Hall of Famer. Did Torrey Holt get in this past year? I can't remember.
He did, but it took him a really long time.
It took him forever.
He just got in this year, and I think it was probably like his 5th or 6th year of being eligible. Must have been.
So the Hall of Fame committees, they're really strict with, like, if you're a quarterback who's kind of on the cusp, like they'll give you some wiggle room because you're a quarterback, right? But these receivers, like, there's some really strict criteria. And Keenan, I love Keenan, one of my favorite Chargers ever, but he's never really been like the receiver of his era, and he's been very, very good and reliable, but I just don't know if he's like a Hall of Fame receiver right now. Obviously, if he like wins a ring and he continues to stack up some of these Chargers records, that would be great. I think, it's going to be tough for Derwin, just given the missed seasons and the lack of like interceptions and all pros. And like, he's not a generational defensive player. I think for me, the player that has the most Hall of Fame potential is Joe Alt, because I think he could be the best offensive lineman of his generation. And I think that's unfortunately like what you have to be. It's not just enough that you're a good Pro Bowl player. Like, you have to be like a generation defining player. And to me, Joe Alt is the best chance at that right now.
I think Khalil too.
Yes. Good call.
Yeah. I think Khalil is probably like, of the older players on the roster, I think Khalil is probably like the most obviously close.
Yeah.
To that sort of
candidacy. Defensive player of the year.
Like, yeah, and it's like not necessarily like super related to like the accolades that he has racked up as a Charger necessarily, right? But like everything he did with the Raiders, everything he did with the Bears, like I think that he probably is. I would probably say that, like, I would assume that Khalil's going to get into the Hall of Fame. Like, I think a lot of this too, like it's hard for people that follow multiple sports, I think, sometimes, because the Basketball Hall of Fame is a combined Hall of Fame. So they let anybody in as long as you had a good college career. The Baseball Hall of Fame is weird, and they let in guys that, they have all the different subcommittees and everything to like make sure that they catch all the guys that don't get in the first time around. Like,
right.
But like, the Football Hall of Fame is hard to get into.
It's so difficult.
Like, it's so hard to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like, if we want to bring this question down one step and be like, which 5 current Chargers do you think make like the team Ring of Honor? Like, I think that's, like a kind of more like what you're looking for maybe in terms of like that question. Cause then I think like Khalil, like obviously Keenan will be in the Ring of Honor. Like, I think like Slater and Alt will have that potential if they come back. Derwin obviously will be. Like, Herbert is on that trajectory. I think Cameron Dicker is probably on that trajectory at this point. Like, so I think if you want to bring it down one level, I think that's probably like, more of a question where then you started to get into like, you have more than 5 candidates. I think for the Hall of Fame, you have maybe like 2 or 3 maximum. And even that's betting on like a lot of sustained success from some of the younger guys on the roster.
Yeah, like last year there were 4 Hall of Fame players. Like they're doing smaller classes every single year. It's tough. Like and now Philip Rivers is going to be waiting another 5 years, so we'll see what happens there. But it's so difficult for that group to get in.
Yeah.
Next one from Sergio says, plot twist: Chargers beat Chiefs and rest starters, including Herbo, for the next 3 weeks, as most likely outcome is still 7 seed for us, then win out. If they're locked into the seeding in week 18, do you think Harbaugh would actually rest starters, or do you think he's going to play them?
Justin Herbert was playing in the preseason under like with Jim
True.
Harbaugh as as head coach. Like I have a hard time believing that Jim Harbaugh specifically would ever rest. Like maybe they'll only play one series, but like I have a hard time believing that he would ever just outright say like they're not playing at all this week, right? Like
Yeah.
So I think even if they were locked into the 7 seed, like I think they would probably be like I think we would probably get a repeat of the Brandon Staley Mike Williams game in week 18, where it's like we're gonna put them all out there because we still have stuff to fight for, and then hopefully an injury to that severity doesn't happen again. But I think that it would probably be a decision that Chargers fans would probably have some PTSD about with how it went last time. But I think that would probably be what Jim,
especially because it's in Denver.
Yeah, exactly.
CJD8009. This is definitely a you question. I have watched zero draft film. I think my general approach is probably a defensive tackle or a guard or center. Like I think interior trenches. Where are you at with? Because they're gonna be in like the 20s ish.
Yeah.
Depending on where they end up, from a playoff perspective. But anybody in that range that you is like stamp of approval right now.
Yeah, I saw a couple of people in the chat, being like, "Oh, like no more Katz's Corner or whatever." Katz's Corner is coming back. My schedule is not really lined up as well. We talked about it earlier. My schedule is not lined up super well. I'm still dealing, as you guys heard earlier in the episode, probably like I'm still dealing with a little bit of like sinus stuff. I had a sinus infection a couple months ago too, so
that's bad.
Yeah, it's just been a little bit of a weird season for me, but yeah, definitely. Right now, I think the guys to know if you have not been paying super close attention is Ole Vavenga-Ioane from Penn State. He's a guard that has done a whole bunch of like jumbo package stuff too, but he's played mostly guard for them the last like couple of seasons, the last like season and a half or so. He's definitely a guy that I'm watching at that 20 spot. Francis Maui-Noa from Miami, who is a left tackle at Miami, but will play guard in the NFL. I think that he's someone to know if he starts to fall a little bit because teams think that he's a guard. Caden Proctor at Alabama kind of falls in that same bucket. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Proctor, but like that's going to be one that you see commonly in the mocks. And then a defensive tackle, if you want somebody, I would probably say like Caleb Banks is probably like what you're looking for there. Maybe like a Caden McDonald from Ohio State. Caleb Banks is from Florida. He only played in a couple games this season because he had a foot injury, but did come back late in the year and play some pretty good football. He's a fifth-year senior, so he has some tape already. Kind of like I think he's a good player in the 20s because like the flashes are really high, but he's kind of up and down play to play. And then Caden McDonald at Ohio State is more of like I don't know if the Chargers necessarily would be like super, super interested in him. I'll have to go back and do his full eval. Obviously, it's only December 11th. But he's a little bit more of like a traditional like nose tackle-ish type guy. And they already have they should re-sign T.R. Tart. If they don't, I'll be very upset.
Yes.
And then they went to Jamari Caldwell this season. So don't necessarily need a player like in that exact archetype. But I would say those are probably the guys to know. I know people are going to mention like the Oregon guys on the offensive line. I like Emmanuel Pregnon. He could maybe get up into that range. I think that right now, for me, he's probably going to end up a little bit more of a second-round player. Depends how the playoffs go, really. And then Yapani Lololu, the center. I've heard varying things about him. I personally like him. Center gets weird because it's so scheme specific, and so the like general grades that he has, like the consensus grades, can kind of be funky. Where it's like, oh well, like we like made this huge reach to take this guy in the second round, and like the consensus said he was like a 4th or 5th round pick, but like he's the top gap center on the board, and so the Chargers are a gap team and they take him in the second. Like the Texans did that with Juice Scruggs a couple of years ago. Obviously that has not worked out a ton, but like it's kind of the same thing where it's just like the center board is kind of weird. So like Yapani Lololu is still definitely a good name to know, but I don't necessarily know if he'll be like a 1st round pick, but more of like a day 2, maybe an early day 3 prospect to know. Cause like I said, I've heard some varying things on him.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of edge mock draft picks for the Chargers right now. We'll see what happens if they're able to retain Odafe Owe and Khalil Mack, and they've got to do a Thule extension also. So potentially a very expensive offseason for edge rusher, but we'll see if they actually want to retain all three of those guys. If they don't, is there an edge rusher in round one that you like?
Ooh, I know that Dane Brugler mocked them Cassius Howell. I think the problem from the Chargers' perspective with Howell is that he's going to have historically short arms. He's very small, like insane,
Yeah.
like smaller than Nick Herbig small. And like Nick
Wow.
Herbig is a good player, but like there's a reason that the Steelers don't play him on every down, which is that he's tiny.
Yeah.
And the Chargers, the way that they've built this edge room, do not seem like they'd be very interested in a player like that.
Sure.
They want somebody that's closer to like the 265, 270-ish range that can set the edge and reduce inside a little bit more and do some more of that stuff. There's not really a ton of those guys at the top of this edge class. Like a lot of those guys are smaller guys. David Bailey is smaller. Romello Height, his teammate at Texas Tech, is smaller.
Bailey's got like freakishly long arms though, right?
Yes, he does. I think like the one I would maybe watch, and I don't know exactly where his stock is going to fall because he's kind of been up and down this season. But the one guy that I can think of that makes sense in that kind of like first two, like 1.5, 2-ish tiers of the edge class is Keldrick Falk at Auburn, who's like more of that like stouter, like 270-ish run defense first, pass rush second kind of guy. That like is built a little bit more in the mold of the way that the Chargers want to build the edge room. Personally, I'm of the opinion that like I like kind of having the changeup of body types and having kind of like the spread of like have one of the guys that is like that, have one guy that's a little bit lighter, have one guy that like is basically a DPR. The Chargers pretty clearly don't want to operate that way with the way that they have built it. So, but yeah, I think Keldrick Falk would be the one to watch. He might go a little bit earlier than the Chargers are picking. Just kind of depends on how it all works out because I know a lot of people have not been super high on his pass rush tools. I've seen a couple of people compare him to Tyree Wilson, which I think is a little unfair to Keldrick Falk because he is not that tall. His pad level is not that bad.
Dude, I hated Tyree Wilson's film.
I hated Tyree
his
Wilson.
film.
It was awful. It was really difficult to watch, but
He was
he's
just
not
like
that bad.
big and tall, and people loved him.
Yeah.
I'm like, the
It's-
tape is
it's
awful.
not- Like I think that's a little bit too far for me, but like certainly like there's going to be a conversation to be had about like there's probably going to be a conversation at some point about like is Keldrick Falk even in edge at all, or like is he actually a 5-tech? Is this a Justin Aboigbe style player? But like at with a better talent level, right? Yeah.
All right, there you go. A little sneak peek at Katz's Corner for you guys. We just got another super chat in at the last minute. Richard says free agent target Tyler Linderbaum, draft target Vega Ione. That's how you say that?
Ioane.
Oh, Ioane. All right.
Yeah.
I'll get that one. Yeah, this is a very popular notion out there on Twitter. The Ravens are extending everybody except Tyler Linderbaum right now. And as long as that continues, I'm going to have a little glimmer of hope that he actually hits free agency. And if he does, the Chargers, I think, should throw a massive bag at him. But again, that's a very little glimmer of hope right now, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I think a few weeks ago I responded to somebody on Twitter and said like I'd be very surprised if he hits free agency. I think if you had asked me to give a percentage at that point, I probably would have said like 2%. And I think now with the way that the Ravens have moved since then in the last few weeks, I would maybe say like 5%. And so it's
we
like,
can work with that, Katz.
there's
We
a
can
little
work with
glimmer
that.
of hope, and it's growing a little bit every day.
Yeah.
But like, I would still be pretty surprised. I think it's probably just that like they're going in order. Like Linderbaum's extension is going to take longer because he's going to want a market resetting deal.
Yeah.
And so that's going to take a little bit longer to hammer out. The deals that they are signing, right? Like the Mark Andrews one is like he's going to retire a Raven. The financials of that deal are not as important.
He's not setting the tight end market right now.
Right. He's not setting the tight end market. It's just like whatever, get him a contract, make sure he retires a Raven. The Travis Jones contract, he's played well, but he's not going to set the defensive tackle market. He's a nose tackle that plays like 60% of the snaps. Like you're not going to reset the defensive tackle market. I thought they got a really good deal on that Travis Jones
100%.
extension anyway.
100%.
But Like that's not a player that's going to be like resetting the market, same thing. And so like Linderbaum is going to be asking for top center in the league money. He's going to be asking for the Cruz Humphrey contract.
As he
I
should.
don't know whether or not the Ravens want to give him that or not. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. They see the way that he's regressed with two younger, worse players at guard next to him, and they say, you know what, like you're not actually like an elevator the same way. I think that'd be a mistake, but maybe they feel that way. I don't know. And so, but that one is always going to take longer because it's going to be a market reset or close to a market reset. And so, I still think that it's probably going to end up getting done. But certainly, if he hits free agency, then yes, the Chargers should throw all the money they have at him.
Yes. The good news for the Chargers is that he is a true free agent, so he doesn't have the 5th-year option. So that there's no long-term ability here for the Ravens. Like they have to get a deal done before free agency starts. So we know there. We've talked about this in our group chat, but I'm keeping a lot of eyes on the Buffalo Bills and their own offensive linemen, Connor McGovern, David Edwards. Those two players would be perfect fits in this offense. If one of those two hits free agency, I'm absolutely signing them. McGovern can play center and guard, so you can give you a lot of flexibility from a draft perspective. David Edwards is a pure guard, so one of those two players hits. That's kind of like your nice little consolation prize if the Linderbaum thing doesn't happen.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, you guys, that is going to do it for us tonight. Much longer show than we initially planned, so appreciate Alex Gadsden for jumping in for Tyler and being a little flexible for us. But we'll be back on Sunday afternoon. After the Chargers and Chiefs game. Tyler will be back here for that for our post-game recap. Hopefully when the Chargers can effectively end the Chiefs season. So this has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We appreciate the heck out of you guys. We'll see you next time. As always, bolt up.
See you guys.